Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third episode of That Kind of Podcast.
I can't believe it's our third episode.
I know, it's gone by quick so far.
It's gone by quick. 13's going to come really quick, and then we'll be on to season 3. Yeah, that's crazy.
So exciting. We'll see what we have on our bookcase for season 3.
Ooh.
Or where we'll be. Maybe we'll just change our every season.
Maybe we'll just go on road trips.
Oh!
Isn't that cool?
Yes! We have a new goal.
I'm telling you.
We can
So please subscribe so that we can actually get enough that we can start doing road trips, because that would be awesome.
How much fun would that be?
It would be pretty cool.
All right. So right now we are That Kind of Podcast.
Yep. And soon we'll be That Kind of Podcast.
The traveling kind of podcast.
I'm telling you.
I like it.
Telling you.
Oh,
yeah. So who are you?
I'm Dia Kappelman. Who are you?
Jenny Olsen-Payton.
There we go. And you're presenting this week. I've had 2 weeks.
You have.
So now you actually get to talk.
You've been holding me down.
I have been.
Yeah, it's been rough.
I'm sure, and everybody listening is like, oh, thank God.
No,
it has been rough.
No, not at all.
So we're getting to talk about one that really got you interested to true crime.
Yep.
Those words are hard to say.
It is.
Apparently.
It is. Well, sometimes words are hard.
Sometimes words are hard. It's like math.
Math is hard.
It is.
Do you remember that Barbie? You're probably a little too young for that. You're not that much young. It was like we have that perfect cusp of me being 44 and you being a little bit younger. There's like
29, right?
16.
I just had my birthday.
Yeah.
16.
Yes, you did. You just had your birthday. So I didn't want to, spill it. But there's that little. Most of the time we have really good references where we know, but there's that little period of time.
We're far enough apart that you were.
Yes.
If we were sisters, we would have gotten along, but not completely.
Yeah, exactly. I
would have been obnoxious.
Would have been? No. So no, but there was this Barbie, and she said, math is hard. And of course, women got very upset.
I'm upset now.
I know. So yeah, they changed it, but that was about the same time this case happened. So
really?
Again, another formative point
Even
in my
though
life.
I just realized I just said math is hard, but
yeah, but you're not Barbie.
I'm not.
And you're not a icon for young girls everywhere.
Yes. But I'm going to be.
Exactly.
I'm going to show young girls math can be hard, and you can still have
and you can be like,
podcast.
True crime is fun.
I'm not sure we should
probably
be encouraging that. No. Solving true crime.
Yes.
Giving victims a voice.
Exactly. I think that's good.
Yes.
I think that's good.
That's important.
So so Israel Keys. So how old would you say you were when you really started getting interested in true crime?
Well, I will say this. I feel like you had a head start on me since you grew up. Instead of reading Pat the Dog and See Jane Go, you were reading Stephen King and Anne Rice. Yes.
This is Pennywise. See Pennywise smile.
So I feel like you probably had a bit of a jump on me on that.
Maybe.
I'm gonna say 10.
For me?
Yes, for you.
Okay, so there's no doubt I was a dark child. No doubt whatsoever.
No.
I'm sure my parents had a therapist on speed dial most of my childhood. And I had great parents. They were awesome.
Really have great parents.
I do have great parents. So they just, and I'm very grateful for the fact that they were strict in a lot of things, but they weren't strict in what I could read. And so,
because that's how you started with Stephen King and
exactly. I still remember my horrified little sister, because she would come in and she'd be like picking up when she was toddling. She'd pick up my book and then she'd be like, "Oh no, put it down and run away." So I've horrified generations. So the year I was 12, this happened, and really it formed a lot of my obsession about true crime, and just the fact. I mean, it kind of opened my world in the fact
because
that
it was close to you.
It was way too close to me, and I didn't realize how close it was to me until I started researching it. But I remember, and it's kind of funny because I was talking to my mom, and it's like, I remember this 3-week period so well, and it was the summer of 1989, and so I was 12 years old. My parents managed a garden center, a group of garden centers, and it was the garden center, 2 company houses. We lived in one of them, and then like for miles around there were apartments everywhere. And it was just a really odd time, and there was just this oppressive feeling. I remember everybody being on kind of edge of the garden center. It was coming off of spring. We had a bunch of people hired, so there was not necessarily anybody specific, but there was lots of interviewing going on. And my parents just freaking out. Well, so then when I was doing research, I was like, I wonder where that apartment complex that this girl disappeared from was. It was like 2 blocks from my house. I'm like, well, no wonder. Yeah, I remember, the police presence. I remember, just my parents would let me walk. There was like a library a couple blocks where I'd pick up my latest Stephen King. And,
because you could read anything as long as it was reading.
Yes. Well, and I remember there was a little side, like, it was not a gas station, but they had, like, movies to rent. And so I'd always go in there and rent movies, and there would be all the god-awful B movies, the horror movies that I love now. And I'm like, I'd be watching, I'd be like, someday I'm going to watch that one, And so it was, I obviously was a dark child. But I remember that whole 3-week period where I couldn't even leave the house practically. And nobody wanted to tell me why, but it was just this like, oh my gosh, something's in the air. Something's in the air. And so now we find out that something in the air was Richard Grissom. Oh. And it's very, very strange because when you hear Kansas City, you hear Bob Berdella, you hear a lot of different serial killers. There's, of course I can't do any of them now, but there's not a lot really said and talked about Richard Grissom.
No, there's not.
It's very strange. So Grissom was described as kind of like a Casanova. He could get anybody to do anything. One detective described him as being able to sell ice to Eskimos. He was good looking, he was athletic, and he owned his own painting company. And that was kind of a ruse to get access to some of these apartment complexes where some of these girls ended up disappearing. He had keys, he was a familiar face. So, at 2 o'clock in the morning when somebody knocks on the door, you would immediately think, oh, not a serial killer, maybe maintenance. Yes. Find out it's him. And so that's how he had access to a lot of these women and how a lot of this stuff went down. So this all, like we were saying, was in 1989. So Grissom was 28 at the time when it was a 3-week period, and it was just a crazy 3-week period. There is record that when he was 16, he did murder somebody named Hazel Meeker. This was in Lansing. She was a 72-year-old woman, tied her to a chair, stabbed her with a railroad spike.
Which should be the end of the story right there.
Exactly. Unfortunately, he was tried as a juvenile. He was in juvenile detention.
There's nothing juvenile about that, to me. That's not just, I accidentally, like when we talked about, what was it? Was it Ed Kemper? I accidentally lost my temper when he killed his grandparents. I lost my temper, I don't really know what happened. A railroad spike is vicious.
Yep. Yeah, I spent a lot of time working with people that make mistakes, and they're good people that make really, really god-awful mistakes sometimes.
I've done that.
Yeah. Hopefully not this god-awful. But
no, I mean, no, not railroad
but
spike.
But there's a certain difference between somebody that because of substance abuse or uneducation or something, doing something horrible and learning from it, and then somebody that is cold-blooded. And I think that's where we kind of draw the line, because there is nothing here that's going to be rehabilitated.
No, an elderly woman with a railroad spike, to start the story off, is not
at 16
rehabilitable.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
And don't pick on, and you already got me with the elderly. Don't touch the elderly. Just don't. Surprisingly enough, he actually left footprints in the snow. The police were able to follow and find him. Good. So he spent from the years of 16 to 18 in juvenile detention. Not long enough. Yep. So he did stints in prison and jail after that for just petty crime. Some of the petty crimes and stuff that he did. He was on parole from prison for burglary and theft right before he took the job as owned his own company. But he didn't have any murders, or they couldn't link him? There's no documented nor true links. There's been some times that he's been suspected. They suspected that he started with sex workers. Which would make sense. Because of the easy access and things like that. Because it seems like, if he got out at 18 to 28 is a long time to not murder someone, and then all of a sudden you go through this quick cycle. Well, and that's what they say. So we talk a lot about the cycle of, a killer. And some killers will go by the moon, some killers will go by, but there's a pattern. They satiate themselves, and then it's like a build-up until they can't control it. Mm-hmm. They do it again, and it's this weird cycle. A lot of times those cycles are much longer. By the time he was caught, they say that he was on a weekly cycle. Which is really quick to go from 10 years to...
Yeah, boom, 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 boom,
Yes.
boom. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident that there's more than just these women. So there are two. He's suspected of 6 murders that he has been accused. He's been convicted of 4, Hazel, and then the 3 women. A week before the first victim, Joan Butler, went missing, there was a woman named Terry Manis that was found in Wichita, murdered in her apartment. Very similar MO, and Grissom had access to keys at that time.
Oh.
So he was not brought up on charges, but he was a suspect in that murder. Shortly before that, there was another break-in in which the woman was able to fight him off. After he broke in, she woke up, he was on top of her. He dragged her out of the apartment. He said he was going to shoot her. She fought back. He shot what sounded like, she said, a cap gun, and they found BBs. And then he took off running.
And that was in Grandview.
That was in Wichita. That was in Grandview, yes.
Yeah.
And so then...
Because you were in Overland
Park.
Park. I was in Grandview.
Yeah.
For all this.
So lots of scary, just way too
Yeah.
close for comfort. She did say that she also went back, and I feel bad for her, and I'm not gonna knock the police because I'm sure they did a bunch of stuff. But then they're like, she found the BBs, and then she went back into her bedroom and she found a pen knife and I'm like, wow, there was a lot of evidence just lying around.
Yeah.
She kept finding.
Okay, finding that is super creepy, but also she sounds really feisty.
Yeah.
So she might have been there like, let me show you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think something dropped in here.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
She might have been leading the police around saying, I'll take care of this.
I got this.
Yeah.
No. So she survived, but so
Good.
he's suspected in both of those. But the first one was June 18th, 1989, Joan Butler. She went out for a night on the town. She came back. They know she came back because they found the clothes that she was wearing in the bathroom. She had changed into some loungewear, pajamas. They found a half-smoked cigarette, a half-eaten piece of toast, and she literally...
She had a good night.
She had a good night. I'm telling you, that's...
At the end of a long night, that buttery toast is like heaven.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so it was weird. No sign of struggle, no sign of, forced entry, nothing.
It's just like she walked out in the middle of...
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. She disappeared. There was use, and this is the scary thing. So she disappeared about 2 blocks from where I lived.
Ooh, that's
which
close.
is very scary. He drove her by my house to her bank, which was the Capital Savings. Capital Federal. That was just right there on the corner that I went to all the time, which is just, when you think about things like that, it's like, wow. And he worked at all those apartments around there. So it's like, I mean, when you think about the fact that you could walk next to or see or,
Or he might have seen you and thought...
That's a dark child. Rectus, Dominus. No. Yeah, it's crazy to think of. But so drove her to there, pulled money out of her account. Yeah. So a week later, she had a rental car at the time. A week later, that rental car was seen in Lawrence. A police officer kind of recognized it and was like, I'm going to watch it. And he waited for a little bit. Richard Grissom came out, started putting things in the trunk. When he was approached, he took off on foot. They did go ahead and impound the car.
Not subtle.
They found his wallet in the car, his checkbook, and they found a drop of blood, of Joan Butler's blood, in the trunk.
Oh.
Yep. So, police say that at that time he then was able to get a ride back from a friend from Lawrence to Kansas City. And then that night, then both Theresa Brown and I've heard her referred to as both Christine and Christina Rusch went missing.
The night he got back from Lawrence.
Yep.
So he basically got back into town and was like...
Feeling a little...
You know what I should do? That was a little stressful. So instead of having a cigarette...
Yep. So the friend, and there's rumor that even the friend dropped him off at the apartment complex because they had said that the friend and Grissom had met the girls at one point at a pool party at the complex. So he was Grissom was describing them to his friend as acquaintances.
So the friend might not... Can you imagine being that friend and thinking... Because if you told me, hey, I need a ride, drop me off at these people's
You'd immediately
house.
suspect me.
No, I mean, you wouldn't think that. Just drop me off at these people's house. They said I could come over. It's cool. You wouldn't think.
It was an issue. Yeah, and this guy, he was very... it is pretty apparent that he knew something was not right, but I don't think he knew to the extent, because
what was wrong.
Yeah, he said there was a couple of times he testified against Grissom.
Good.
And he did say that there was a couple of times he started telling him things, especially like the fact that the money that Grissom was using to pay his employees was stolen from the women. And so he was like, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it. So he didn't quite know the extent. I hope to God he didn't know the extent, but he did turn everything over that he could to the police.
At least there's that.
At least there's that. So that's when, like I said, Theresa Brown and Christine Rusch went missing. They were both 22. They shared a birthday. And from what I understand, they were very close friends. He took them and their bank accounts got drained. The last picture of Theresa was her at an ATM camera. She looked very disheveled, had big glasses on, and had a bruise on her forehead.
Oh, no.
And after that, she went missing.
Oh.
2 days after those girls went missing, a maintenance man in Grandview saw a figure kind of huddled in a corner under the stairwell, and was like, "Hey, what's up? What do you need?" He's like, "I'm here to see Michelle." And so the maintenance guy knew it was kind of weird, and he's like, "Okay, so you mean like blonde hair, blue eyed Michelle?" And Michelle wasn't, I guess, blonde hair, blue eyed, and he's like, "Yeah, that's who it is." And so he knew something was up, and so immediately Grissom took off because he knew he had been caught and left a car.
Again, a good look.
Yeah, left a car, and the car was packed floor to ceiling with all his stuff, including
again with his wallet, checkbook, all of that.
Yeah, he's like, "Dang, I just renewed my license." But there was 5 birth certificates and 5 high school equivalency papers with different names. So he was
he was getting ready to go.
Yep. So then this manhunt went on for 2 weeks. Everybody was freaking out. Everybody didn't know where to turn. That 2 weeks I remember just being horrific. And then he was found at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. He was going to stay with a girl that he had been romantically involved with in the past, and he had a kill kit on him.
Oh.
So he was extradited back to Kansas City, where he awaited trial.
I was thinking her Lucky Stars.
No kidding. So he was brought back in. Interrogation was really weird. I mean, he was just a dick during interrogation. He would say things like, "Well, you're going to have to dig them up," or "I didn't kill them in Missouri because they have a death penalty, so all the bodies are going to be found in Kansas." And then the worst was, "Well, they're not dead. Well, they probably are now." So he was playing with everybody. He was just
God bless the detectives that can deal with that. I couldn't.
No, I would ball peen hammer. That's all I can say.
There's no way I'd hear that first thing and be like, "We need to turn the cameras off."
Yeah. Well, and
we don't need a trial. We're good. Which is why I'm not a detective either. I think we covered that last time. Terrible.
Yeah. So he was incredibly, unfortunately, very intelligent. So he knew what he was doing, and he is using this information to kind of lord it over so that someday, somehow, he'll be able to get something out of it.
So even though he's in jail for life, he's in prison for life,
he still hasn't said anything.
He hasn't said anything in case it gets him something.
Right.
Or is he just in general being an ass?
I think he's just in general being an ass.
Because he's got that. So why would he tell anyone?
Yeah.
He's got power.
Yeah. And he actually during the this part just makes me sick. During, I believe it was Theresa's father's testimony, when he was on the stand, he of course was crying and was upset, and Grissom was seen taking extensive notes. So it was almost like he was all I can think of is like spank bank, but like, basically filing it away so that he can enjoy
all the
it
hurt
later.
and pain that he had caused his father.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
That's grotesque on a completely different level.
Yep. So the trial was set for the fall of 1990. He was actually the first person in Johnson County to be convicted without bodies. So since the bodies had never been recovered, that was almost unheard of. The prosecutor, I'm pretty sure it was the prosecutor, his name was Paul Morrison, and as soon as I heard his name, I could picture him because I remember him all over the newspaper and all over the news, and he got a case together that was able to be, ironclad, and they gave him his first chance of parole is in 2071, and he'll be 110 at the time. So he's
still
not
too soon.
Still too soon. He's not going anywhere. Thankfully.
Can you imagine? I couldn't be a prosecutor either, because you have to prepare a thoughtful case, a thoughtful argument. You have to get everything together. I would be the person as the prosecutor and be like, look at him.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Really?
Yeah, my argument would be, really?
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about the victim.
Let's.
Because, they're the most important part in all of this. So Joan Butler was the first one. She was 22. And she was, she worked for an advertising firm, and they called her a media buyer, which I'm not quite sure what it is. I kind of envision, when you have to buy songs to play them. So copyright, yeah, that type of thing.
Okay.
She disappeared on Father's Day, and the sad thing is that this was her first Father's Day away from her family. She was originally from Wichita.
No.
And her father, she talked to her father the week before, and she promised to call him on Father's Day. Well, Father's Day was on a Saturday. She wasn't discovered missing until Monday. So not only did he remembered being so sad not hearing from his daughter on Father's Day, and then the next phone call he got was that she was missing.
That breaks your heart.
Yeah, they described her as very reliable, very ambitious, and just a good person all around. In fact, the funny thing is that when she didn't show up for work on Monday, one of her coworkers immediately went to her apartment. There was no calling. I mean, he was calling, but he was like, I was at the apartment, and knocked on the door. And when he realized nobody was answering, he called the dad, and the dad gave the landlord or the manager permission to go ahead and access the apartment, and that's when they found that she was truly missing. So then,
yeah. Thank God for friends that go to 100.
Yeah, no kidding. So next was Theresa Brown and Christina. Rusch. They lived together. They shared a birthday. They were both 24. Theresa was a dental assistant. Her goal was to be a dental hygienist. So she was in the process of going to school. People just really kind of described her as a light and just a great person.
She lit up a room.
Yeah, she did. Jenny was a dark child.
She lit up no rooms.
In fact, they got a little dimmer.
She brought her Eeyore Black Cloud. I'm just in the corner anyway. Yeah, they're never gonna say that about us.
No.
Keith Morrison's gonna have issues with that. Well, Jenny, there's a lot we can say about Jenny.
Anybody want to take a shot? Anyone?
Yeah.
Anyone?
We'll edit that part out. That's my Keith Morrison.
That's awesome.
It's dead on. Sorry, Keith.
Oh my gosh.
Call me.
She was known as a responsible and caring individual. And she had lunch daily with her sister. So when she didn't show up for lunch, her sister knew something was wrong.
Oh.
Yep. So Christina worked, I've heard her name, both Christine and Christina. Christine worked for her dad in North Kansas City at, it's called Firestone Optics, which is a contact lens manufacturing company. Not a lot was really, not a lot was known about her other than that she was very close to her family and had good friends and was just again, a good person.
We're going to say she lit up a room too.
Yeah. All these women were much better people than Richard Grissom will ever be. Yeah. It's just, it's tragic. One of the good things that did come from this is the families did form friendships, and they got together every year on the girls' birthdays to do a memorial service. Sadly, Theresa's father died in 2006, and Christine's mother died in 2009.
And they never really got answers.
No. The families still honor the girls. The Butlers funded a scholarship to KU where Joan went. The Browns do the same through Theresa's high school, which, if I remember correctly, was Camdenton High School. And the Rusches contribute money to Safe Home, which is the Kansas equivalent of like Hope House, domestic violence, women's shelter, and the Ronald McDonald House. The schools have thought, there's 2 of them right now, that the girls are either buried at Clinton Lake, which is outside of Lawrence, and
which I know they did a lot of searches around there.
They did a lot of searches around there. and or they're in a landfill. One of the people were quoted in saying, I think it might have been Morrison as well, in saying that once once something is in a landfill, within minutes it can be 200 feet down. So yeah, and some of the things that were described, I had to write these down because they just cracked me up. Lieutenant Police Officer Pat Hinkle says he's just your typical con man. He won't say anything unless there's something to be gained for him.
Okay, I like that he's described as typical. Yeah. Because you know that has to eat at him.
Yeah.
He's typical.
Yes. Jim Brown, which is Theresa's brother, said he's arrogant in his little pea brain. He still thinks some days he's going to use this as a bargaining chip to benefit himself. Mm-hmm. And then FBI Special Agent Mike Napier said, if he had a typewriter, the letter I would be worn off, which I love that. So he is currently about 60. He is, last I could find was that he was in El Dorado prison. They do say that he has to be moved every 9 months because he is very charismatic and is a high escape risk.
He can make friends way too easily.
Yes. And this is my favorite part about all of this, because I think he just needs to take it to the groin, just because his aliases are T-Money and Take Money.
Are you serious? He stole money from the women that he was murdering. And he's going to use
And he has the balls to go about jail saying, my name is T-Money or Take Money. You have a pea brain.
I feel like that was way too kind.
I can't keep using asshat. I mean, it's like every single episode is going to be like Richard Grissom, massive asshat.
Wow.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like any chance he can get to just dig the knife in a little deeper, he's going to take.
But he's doing it in a way, like some criminals will do it in a way that you know that's what they're doing.
Uh-huh.
He's doing, I mean, like, unless you're educated in what he's doing, you don't think that's what he's doing. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. And he's just a very odd man. So, who is way too smart to be as dumb as he is. Mm-hmm. So, we're gonna leave it at that. But, you know, my mom does have a theory
about him,
and it's a very interesting theory. So, there was a hotel that went up very quickly around the same time that these girls went missing. So she has said she's always wondered if
he knew that and put them underneath.
Yep. So that would be which goes along with another unsolved case that I might have to do in the future. And I would be really interesting. I think the timeline is too far, if I remember correctly, but there's a Missouri case that is kind of similar to this one too.
Okay.
And so I might be covering that one in the future.
All right.
So
sounds good.
Well,
that's what we got. For doing this one.
You are welcome. Yeah, thank you for putting up with me. Like I said, this was truly my, all I can say is swan song.
I feel like that's the end. Yeah. And this isn't the end.
No,
we're not.
This is only episode 3!
We're done. Bye.
Oh, yeah. So, this is Richard Grissom. But,
well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That was a good Kansas City one that we don't hear much about.
Yep, that's exactly right. So if you have a crime that you want us to cover. Oh, and then the other thing, I gotta share this quickly. So one of the things that was so weird about this is that when I was doing this, I was like, Grissom Shack, the Grissom Shack, the Grissom Shack. And for some reason I remember that's like an ingrained memory, but I can't find anything about it. The only thing that's ever said in one of the articles was the Grissom Shack was torn down and now there's apartment complexes where they were. I'm assuming there was some mention about a farmhouse where some of the women's IDs were found. But I don't know. So if you happen to remember what the Grissom Shack is, email us. Let me know. Because it's going to be one of those things that's going to hit me at 3 o'clock in the morning. And that's not a fun thing to wake up to.
Let us know.
Yeah. So, but if you have a crime you want us to cover, if you know what the Grissom Shack is, you just want to tell us that we're crazy, you can email us at, that kind of podcast at gmail.com.
We're gonna go for week 4 that Jenny gets our email right.
We're getting there. I just learned our old name.
That kind of podcast.
That kind of podcast.
At gmail.com.
Yeah. What did I say
Facebook,
earlier?
Instagram.
I said something.
I don't know. You've called it something different every time we...
I have.
We'll get it right eventually.
Eventually. So, have a good week, guys. We'll see you next week.
See you later.